This is Grandmaster Daniel Naroditsky. We are watching Mamedyarov taking on Magnus Carlsen at the 2023 Norway Chess Blitz tournament. And Mamedyarov starts the game off with a Queen's Gambit, which Magnus declines. He plays the move c6. That is the Slav variation. The knight's getting developed, and Mamedyarov trades early on d5. That is, of course, the exchange Slav, which is not just a drawish weapon. It can be played for a win. And let's see how Mamedyarov develops the rest of his minor pieces. The bishop comes out to d3. Carlsen's bishop aggressively is developed over to g4. And Magnus establishes the pawn chain with e6. This is still very well-known theory, and Mamedyarov's move h3 caused a little bit of hesitation as Carlsen exchanges his bishop for Mamedyarov's knight and brings the other bishop out to d6. A very quiet position here. Symmetrical pawn structure. All of the side's minor pieces are playing nicely. Bishop to g5. Shakirov trying to keep his bishop pair on the board, but Magnus chasing that bishop around, and he plays the move h6. And Mamedyarov now has to decide what he's going to do with his bishop, and he doesn't exchange the bishop for the knight. That would have been ultra drawish. Instead, he keeps the bishop pair with bishop h4, and Carlsen could continue to chase the bishop with g7, g5, but that is a very weakening move. Mamedyarov would drop the bishop back to g3, and in the event that the bishops were exchanged, the f file would open up, and Black's knight on f6, having lost the support of the g-pawn, would have come under fire of White's rook and White's queen. So g5, if Carlsen plays it, is a move associated with a steep price tag. Let's see what Magnus does here. A long think, and he does in fact decide to play g5, and he goes exactly for the position that I was talking about. And what does he have in mind here? Queen to e7. Mamedyarov immediately castles kingside, and now the rook on f1 is acting to pressure the knight on f6, and Carlsen actually castles to the same side. He castles kingside in spite of having a pawn on g5, and Mamedyarov continues to accumulate the pressure on the f-file. I like his position here. Rook comes up to f2. The other rook is going to slide into f1, and it does so without hesitation. Now the knight on f6 is actually hanging. Mamedyarov is threatening to capture it with his rook, and Carlsen will have to move that knight away, and he's trying to decide where he wants the knight to go. Will he go back to e8? Yes, he will. Knight f6, back to e8. And I think Magnus wants to reroute that knight over to d6, where at the very least it will control a couple of important squares in the center. But look at the precision and the gusto with which Mamedyarov is attacking h3, h4, all hands on deck by Shakirov as he attacks that weak pawn on g5, but Carlsen ignores him. Knight e8 comes out to d6, completing the maneuver initiated on Carlsen's previous move, and Mamedyarov might be running out of pieces to attack with. His bishop, his queen, his rooks, all of them are in the attack, and now he involves the queen more directly. Queen e2 comes out to h5, and Carlsen has to deal with a ton of threats on the queen side. The most immediate threat seems to be rook f2 up to f6. That would attack the h6 pawn, and it would slice off the connection between Black's queen and the g5 pawn. So rook f6, the most troublesome move that Carlsen has to deal with right now. He can do so by pushing his f-pawn from f7 up to f5, but that creates even more weaknesses that Mamedyarov could try to attack by playing g4. Carlsen down to a minute and a half. He has clearly misplayed this opening, but we know how good Magnus Carlsen is at wheeling his way out of these types of situations. He's taking as long as he needs to take in order to avoid getting checkmated in the next couple of moves. Mamedyarov with a full complement of 2.5 minutes on his clock. Mamedyarov looking intensely at the board. Carlsen shaking his head. He is disgusted with the way that the early middle game has gone. Mamedyarov just seems comfortable. He seems satisfied. He's looking off to the side. Carlsen down to a minute on the clock. Mamedyarov threatening rook f2 up to f6. Carlsen doesn't see a move. There's also the idea of a sacrifice on f7. What that would do is remove the defender of the g6 square, and then subsequently White's queen could slide up to g6 and combine with the bishop on d3 to create mate threats against Black's king, and that is yet another demon that Magnus Carlsen has to exercise from the position. And we see one of the other players putting on his jacket there briefly. I don't know who that was, but it doesn't matter because our eyes are on this ensuing time scramble, and Carlsen finally bites the bullet, and he sees nothing better than to push the f-pawn up to f5 and slice off the diagonal for White's bishop. I think that was the only move and the only way to defend against rook f6. And indeed, as we discussed, Mamedyarov taking almost no time to push the pawn up to g4, and Magnus Carlsen is under a full-out assault with 30 seconds on the clock. He pushes the knight up to e4 and establishes it in the center, trying to get as many pieces off the board as possible. But will this work? Will Mamedyarov take that knight off the board, and what will he take it with? Well, the sensible move seems to be bishop takes e4, so that when Carlsen recaptures on e4, it doesn't come with tempo. If Mamedyarov takes that knight with his own knight, then Carlsen will recapture with a pawn, and the bishop will be under attack. Mamedyarov would have had to lose another tempo to move that bishop, and every tempo is golden in positions like this. And so a trade on e4 has occurred, and Mamedyarov trading more pieces with rook takes f8, and rook takes f8, another trade. Oh, and Carlsen is in trouble. He has to take with a queen, and h takes g5 picks up a very important kingside pawn. Queen takes g5 check, and even though Carlsen's king is no longer in danger of getting checkmated, Mamedyarov is now up a g-pawn. Queen h5 check, continuing to chase that king around, and will Mamedyarov involve his knight in the attack? Look at how quickly he is playing. Look at how confidently he is playing. 90 seconds on the clock for Shakir. Carlsen is disgusted with the way that this game has gone, and that decision to castle kingside early in the game, that has cost the former world champion, and g5 is on the board, establishing an h6 square for white's queen. Queen f5, Carlsen not refusing to die quickly. He tries to keep all of the important squares under control, but Mamedyarov involving his knight now. Knight c3 to e2, another excellent positional move, and the knight threatens to come up to f4. What will it be doing on f4? Well, it will be supporting that passed g-pawn, which will threaten to jump up to g6. Carlsen is running out of defensive ideas as he shifts his e-pawn from e6 over to e5, trying to stir up as much complication in the center as possible. But with only 11 seconds on the clock, how is he going to hold Mamedyarov's initiative, and how is he going to keep that g-pawn restrained for many moves to come? Mamedyarov taking as long as he needs here. Will he exchange on e5? Will he move his knight from e2 to g3? A lot of choices here. He does trade on e5. Carlsen recaptures with the knight, and Mamedyarov looks to involve his own knight in the attack, and a little bit of hesitation. There's a lot of options here. There's knight e2 to d4. There's knight e2 to f4, which is a more tactical attempt. That might actually threaten the move g6. Even though the g6 square is very well defended by all three of Black's pieces, it's a team effort for Magnus Carlsen's piece tandem as he tries to hold Mamedyarov's attack at bay, and Carlsen very unhappy with Mamedyarov's choice of square there. King back to e8, and that just seems like close to resignation for Magnus Carlsen because he just allows the pawn to move up to g6, and this game looks like it's over. g6. That pawn is 2 squares away from promotion. Carlsen one last attempt to attack Black's queen, but the queen simply moves up to h8, and you could just tell the way that Carlsen is moving that he knows his days are numbered, and he resigns the game. The pawn is unstoppable, and what a smooth game by Shakir Mamedyarov to defeat Magnus Carlsen. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to click the link in the playlist for more of these Blitz videos. Thank you so much for watching.